What's up, everybody? Joe Brown here. This is the Heresy Financial Show, and today we are talking about Iran, who is proposing a new currency, a multinational currency, in order to get around dollar sanctions. Nobody in the world right now wants to be subject to potential sanctions or current sanctions from the United States. So anybody who's worried about that is currently looking for a way around having to use the dollar. And Iran is now proposing a new currency that would be used between China, Russia, India, Pakistan, and more in order to accomplish this goal in yet another move towards global de-dollarization. Ready? Let's dive in. One of the most common questions that I get when I meet you in person is, where do I get all the information that I use to make these videos? And this article is probably a good example of that, where a lot of you will probably be looking at this article and being like, man, where did you get this from? And the answer for this part of it is actually from you guys. I'm constantly getting DMs on Twitter and emails and comments with links to articles and information about stuff. This is, this crazy things are happening all over the world, and it is just not possible for one person to keep up with all of it. I do the best job that I can, but a lot of it actually comes from you guys. So I appreciate, and I can't actually remember who sent me this, who it was that gave me this article here about this new currency, but you know who you are, and I really appreciate it because we are talking about it in this video. So let's dive in. So Iran is proposing a new currency for trade with China, Russia, India, Pakistan in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and we've got a nice little picture of the SCO here from 2018. All right, so number one, most countries, if they want to do international trade, they have to use the dollar. They have to have some exposure to the dollar, and that's why sanctions have been particularly effective over the last couple of decades when the United States has used them, because you essentially can cut off a country from international trade. That can cripple their economy. We've seen that used in places like North Korea as well. But the more power you have, the more potential you have to abuse that power. But the more you abuse that power, the more potential you have to lose it. And so using the dollar in this way is a great example of this. Having everybody in the world use the dollar for international trade is a position of great power. But the more you abuse that power and lock people out of international trade, the more incentive you create for countries to look for ways around that. That's what's going on here. And by the way, as a side note, this is happening for individuals too. If you're looking at this and thinking that if the United States can sanction Russia, can sanction North Korea, can sanction any country that they want, but they can't sanction you, man, that is a dangerous place to be in, because they can. It's called the Patriot Act. They can lock you out of your bank accounts. They can seize your assets. They can freeze your assets. They can do anything they want. And if you don't have a way around being reliant on the dollar, being able to transact and do trade, buy and sell without touching dollars, then you're putting yourself at risk for being completely subject to whatever our ivory tower elites sitting in their chairs, isolated from the everyday lives of everyday Americans, say that they think we should do. And Iran thinks the exact same thing. And so that's why they have proposed creating a new currency. They want to be able to do trade with countries like China, Russia, India, and Pakistan, with those the members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. This would directly challenge the United States-dominated financial system and the status of the dollar as the de facto global reserve currency. Now, I've said many times that I think it looks like the future of the global financial system is more fractured and more decentralized than it has looked for a very long time. Because as this whole system kind of starts to crumble, you're going to have competing systems pop up in its place. So I would expect more things. This is kind of like a version of the euro, where there's a new currency for countries to do international trade with outside of the dollar. And so this is something I would expect to see more of, not less of. Money is a winner-take-all game. So the best money usually wins as the one that most or everybody uses. And so that is the case. But it doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen immediately. And so for the time being, you have a fracturing of the global financial system. Countries, companies, individuals will all start to try and use and promote their own currency that they think is the best form of money, and one of them will win, but we just don't know which one. So that's what this is doing here. challenging the dollar as the global reserve currency. And it is very popular, not just in Asia, but even in South America, as Brazil's left-wing leader, Lula da Silva, has pledged that if he wins the presidential election in October of this year, he'll create a new currency for trade in Latin America called the South in order to, again, combat the dependency on the dollar. So this is not something that just Russia doesn't like. This is not something that just Iran and North Korea doesn't like. This is something that many countries around the world don't like. They say, yes, it's necessary to have to use the dollar right now because we want to engage in international trade, but it's not ideal. We don't want to be dependent on the dollar because just as they used it as a position to try and fight Russia, they can use that against anybody. It doesn't just have to be a country like North Korea anymore. It can be anybody. Now, as a final note, with many of these things happening, we continually see more and more examples of efforts to de-dollarize all around the world. We're seeing new currencies being proposed. We're seeing new payments systems being talked about, being developed. We are seeing more potential gold-backed currencies. Central banks continue to stack gold all around the world. We're seeing some countries move to Bitcoin. We're seeing all these things happen. We have no idea which one, and to be honest, we have no idea which ones will succeed, but we also know that most of them won't. So most of the things like this that are tried will fail because it's a winner-take-all game. So this is not something that I'm looking at as a play to try and make money. I'm not trying to bet on a winner here. This is not really something that you can even do that with, but I'm not looking at this and saying, okay, which currency will overtake the dollar? That's the wrong point. The right point is to say, hey, I need to make sure that I'm more versatile and I'm not completely reliant on one currency, one financial system, so that as things continue to change very quickly now and the global financial system becomes more fractured, I can adapt, I can continue to do business, I can go where I want, I can do business with who I want to do business with, and I am not stuck being subject to one government's, one totalitarian regime's money and their abuse of that power. And a few very practical ideas on how to get started with this. Number one, buy some gold and have some of it stored in another country so that if you have to leave, you've got some waiting for you on the other side. Number two, buy some Bitcoin. Right? That's definitely a currency that if you want to buy or sell something denominated in that money, that no government's going to be able to come in and stop that transaction and stop you from doing it. You can flee with just a few words memorized in your head and take that wealth with you. So there's some very simple things that you can do to start and get your wealth, or at least a part of it, outside the traditional financial system, just in case. As always, really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.